Hey guys, how you doing today? Welcome to Millionaire Mafia. I'm Jake Chambers, and today I'm going to be talking about how I pulled off a hat trick in real estate. And what I mean by a hat trick in real estate is that I ended up buying 3 properties that were all chained together, meaning one led to the next, which led to the next. And without the previous one, the next one wouldn't have happened more than likely, right? And what I want to focus on today is a couple of the techniques that I use on a regular basis that in this particular instance allowed me to be able to close these other 2 deals after the first one. How this started was I had a property that was brought to me by a fellow investor who had it under contract and wanted to assign it to me, meaning he was taking the contract that he had and I was going to replace him on that contract and he was going to get a fee for that. So we closed on this single property and we got to work. We did really quick work on this one. It was kind of a clean slate. It just needed to be put all back together. Okay. So we got in and we got to work. And while we were there, I got to know the neighbors. I always go next door and I say, "Hey, how you guys doing? I'm Jake, and I'm, working on this house. I own this one. I'm going to be fixing it up. Would you mind taking, keeping an eye on it or whatever when I'm gone because it's going to be vacant." I got to know them, and my kids were there, so my kids are very respectful and really easygoing, and so they got to know the neighbors too, and they really liked us, right? And then they saw that we were doing really hard work and we were doing good work and good things and making the property better and making the neighborhood better as a whole. Fast forward a couple months, as we were wrapping up our project, I got a call from by the neighbors, and he said, "Hey, Jake, I am a tenant here," and I already knew that, but he said, "I'd like you to talk with the seller of this property, or the owner of the property. She's looking to sell this property. She doesn't want it." I said, "Absolutely." So he put me in touch with her, and I gave her a call, and we started talking, and I got listened to what she had to say about what she was looking to do with it and how quickly she needed to move and how much she wanted everything, and we ended up coming to a price that was mutually agreeable to both of us, and I bought that property as well. So that one we closed pretty quick. It was a relatively easy transaction. There was a completely clean title, no issues. So it worked out well. Well, that tenant moved out the day before closing. I actually helped him a little bit, and we met there on the day of, and he kind of showed me around and even showed me some of the things that he knew were jacked up with the house that needed to be fixed. All right, so that was pretty cool. So we get in there. My crew and I looked to see what needed to be done, and we came up with a game plan, and we said, "Okay, we're going to do this." Well, the next day, I get a call from that former tenant, and he said, "Hey, Jake, I got my brother here, and he needs to sell his house." And so I said, "Okay, what's up, man?" And he just literally put him on the phone, and I talked to him, and he said, "Hey, I'm Aubrey, and I got this property, yada yada yada. Here's the details about it, and I'm looking to get 60,000 for it." And I said, "Okay." And I at the time was looking up. I was in front of my computer, and I had the property address up on Google Street View, and I had it up on Zillow, and I had pulled up the county records and the MLS, and I was kind of running my own comps based off of after repair value and what had sold in the area. And I determined that the value of this property was approximately $100,000 to $110,000. So not a very expensive one, kind of in a rougher area, but is an area that I have got a couple properties already, so I knew it was a great rental market. Now, even though I knew that, I knew that it would have to basically be almost ready to go at $60,000. But since we had just spoken for the first time, I didn't want to go ahead and start running him down on the deal because I could tell over the phone based off of me listening that he really wanted to show me the property. So I said, "Okay, I haven't been past a couple of these properties of mine anyway recently, so I would like to go do that." And I just drive by my properties once in a while and see what's changed in the neighborhood and if there's any other potential deals, or talk to the neighbors and things like that. Notice trend here, right? So I met him at his property, And he had told me it needs work. So I knew that 60,000 probably wasn't going to work, but I didn't make any offers over the phone at the time. There's a time to do that. I didn't feel the time to do that was then. I knew that he was, or I just sensed that he was a guy that needed to get to know you. And it turned out I was right. So I meet him at the property, and he just started really kind of being quiet and let me walk around the house. And so I was quiet because the goal is to get the seller to talk first, or as much as possible, and then just before, while it gets awkward, then maybe infer or induce a little, like a question or make a statement that might induce them to say something, kind of mention some type of damage that's done that's obvious, and then see if they'll talk about it, and then maybe convey something else that was wrong that maybe you didn't see or that wasn't blatantly obvious. So we're walking around the house, and the place was crawling with bugs. It was infested. Unfortunately, that's not too uncommon with a lot of the properties that we buy. And it was very dated. It was a 1970s, 60s house, and it hadn't been updated since then. It had some paneling on the walls, and I knew that it was aluminum wiring. So right there, we're looking at $10,000 or $11,000 right off the bat. But honestly, overall, there was some wood damage on the outside, and the roof was older. But looking inside, I didn't see any active leaks or anything like that. Major stuff like that. And even then, I can factor in what a roof's going to cost, and it's a pretty set cost. So it was pretty good shape. So other than having to repair drywall, because down here they don't use conduit, they use Romex, so you have to actually cut the wall most of the time to get to it. So you're going to have some drywall damage and repair and painting and all that stuff. It was pretty straightforward. The kitchen was in really good shape. Countertop was a little bit old, but it's not a big kitchen, so get a cheap Formica, a few $100s to replace that, plus some labor, and you're good to go. Otherwise, the cabinets were pretty good, solid wood, and a little bit of damage underneath the sink where you typically expect there to be water damage, but that could be easily replaced with a couple pieces of plywood. We go outside because the place was crawling. It was giving me the heebie-jeebies, so we go outside, and we're in the front, and we get to building rapport. I just started talking to him and asked him a little bit about his life and stuff like that, and turns out he was a 22, 23-year Army veteran. So we had that kind of common bond or common experience as military service members, and he ended up talking about how this property had been just a heartache for him and his wife ever since they had it. He had recently just kicked his daughter out and put her in rehab, who had abused the property and their trust and everything. And then he also had a deacon at his church that screwed him. He had other people that basically he was always putting friends and family into this thing, and they took advantage of him. After we had gone through, he kind of realized kind of how bad a shape it was and what it needed and what needed to be done. At this point, I was just listening. I was just letting him talk, and anytime he would stop, I would kind of give it a minute to make sure there was nothing else. And then I would just, ask an open-ended question. You want to try to avoid yes or no type answers or questions, right? Because it requires that seller or that person to expound on the question, right? Not just say yes or no, right? Then sometimes they'll just say yes or no because that's what you want. They think that's what you want to hear. You want them to actually explain what legitimately is going on. We actually got to a point where he was going over and breaking down like into tears over some military stories that he had with friends who had been killed and some bad training accidents and stuff like that. So basically he got to know, like, and trust me, which is very key in building rapport and getting a seller to actually want to do business with you. Now, it doesn't mean that you are, being disingenuous or dishonest. Like, we legitimately care about these sellers and their problems. And at the end of the day, that's what we're here for, is to solve problems and fix them for the sellers, right? So that's what I was there to do. He wanted $60,000. And I knew that wasn't going to work. I anticipated the property needing about $20,000 to $25,000 in repairs. So I offered $35,000. And when a seller doesn't instantly reject an offer or say, hey, you're crazy or whatever, that doesn't necessarily mean anything, but usually it means that they at least understand the situation and they don't completely disagree with you. Now, it doesn't mean that you're going to necessarily come to an agreement, but they understand why you came to that offer. And I backed that up with facts. I said, hey, a roof is 410 to 419 a square right now. Flooring is X amount per square foot. I need to take off this paneling. It cost me this much for drywall. I literally just fixed the property next door to the one that his brother was in, and this is what it cost me, and it was a comparably sized house. So I was able to back these statements up with facts and evidence, right? And that's what's key. So that experience that you have is going to play big role. Is going to have a big effect onto your ability to negotiate with sellers. And we ended up, long story short, we left the house, and he said he was going to talk to his wife. There's some seller concessions that you can use to prevent that situation, but I knew that he was kind of done, and I wasn't in a big hurry. I just had finished one, and I was working on another deal, and I felt confident on this one that he was going to call me back. Well, about 5 days later, he reached out to me via text and said, hey, we can do $40,000. So right there, I already reduced that purchase price by $20,000 just by having a conversation for an hour and a half or so. Now, I still am not where I need to be or where I wanted to be. So it doesn't mean that just because they came down, right? Because I could say I want $1 million for a property that's worth $50,000. And if I get them to come down to $200,000, that's an $800,000, concession. Well, it doesn't mean anything because it's not worth that much, right? So it's all relative. But right there, I was able to reframe his mindset and get him down. Okay, so now we're pretty close though. So now I go to work and I say, hey, let me make some concessions to you. I can't give you $40,000 for the reasons that we already discussed. However, if you can work with me, I'll work with you. And so I didn't give a set price. What I did is I said on what I'm going to give him per se. I said, I will buy it for $38,000, but I'll also cover all of the closing. And then you get rid of all that stuff in the backyard. There was some junk and some stuff in the shed and a boat off the side that was old junky. And he said, okay, we'll do that. So basically, yes, I came up $3,000 and I'm covering closing costs, but I was going to cover those anyway. And I have a closing title company that does it for pretty cheap, so and gives good coverage and everything. So I wasn't too concerned about that. That was already built in to my $35,000 offer. So I came up a little bit, and because I knew it could be a good deal, and I knew that while I ran it at 20 to 25 conservatively, if I did things right, I could probably get away at 15 to 20,000. So I would be all in for about $55,000. And this property, is a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house with a converted garage that's essentially a 4th bedroom. So it's almost essentially a 4-2 with a fenced-in yard. And I can get $1,100 all day in this area, even though it's a lower income area. I'll be all in for about $55,000. So right there, you may have heard things, people talk about the 1% rule or the 2% rule or whatever. And that just means that the purchase price of the property and the rehab, so my all-in costs are whatever that rent is 1% or 2% or 3% or whatever percent of that total amount. $1,100 a month is essentially 2% of $55,000, if that makes sense. So that means in 50 months, so just over 4 years, I'm going to get all my money back. That's all that means right there. Right now, there's obviously taxes and insurance and things like that, but that's just the basic easy equation. I would highly recommend not using that as a sole qualifier to buying or not buying a property. There's a lot of things that go into it, and I have a video on the BRRRR process: buy, rehab, rent, refinance, and repeat, that is used as the bedrock of my investment business, as well as many other investors. You definitely should check that out. I'll link that above and I'll put it in the description. But check that video out as far as running the numbers. And then in a few days or a couple weeks, whenever that video pops on the specific properties that I'm doing, as far as the first property, the second property, and then this property that I'm just talking about, check those out, those detailed breakdowns of the property. and look at how I ran the numbers and why I came up with the numbers I did. That's basically how I bought 3 properties off of one deal, right? You saw how they chained because of what I did on one led to the next one, because I was able to follow through and I held my word and I moved quickly and I did exactly what I was going to say and then some. I was able to get that next property as a referral, right? That's the same way that people in businesses, whether it's for a product or whether it's realtors or whatever, like that, they get referrals, and it's because they do good work. Here's what I learned on these properties. The first one is move quickly and always do good work. Okay, if you move quick and you're able to get the job done quickly, efficiently, and you do a good job, chances are you're going to be able to find a lot of other people that want to work with you. Okay, number 2 is always get to know the neighbors one way or the other. Maybe you're not going to buy their house or somebody else's house, but a lot of times I've had neighbors that'll look after my property. I come to find out on one property, it had a lawyer that lived across the street, and they told me some information about the tenant that I inherited, that I was trying to get out, that I was able to use as leverage against that tenant to get them to move out without costing me any money or any legal action, and it was pretty helpful. So there's a lot of things that can be helpful by just being neighborly, okay? We live in a day and age where people don't want to freaking talk to each other. This isn't the right business for you if that's the case. If your head's down on your phone and that's the only way you communicate with people, it's not going to work. You're not going to be successful. There's a time and a place, but you got to get out, beat the pavement, knock on doors, and say hey to people and be friendly, all right? The other thing, and these 2 things kind of go together, it's find a common ground with people, right? Get them to like, know, and trust you, and then build that rapport, right? So those are kind of all the same thing. They go together. Get to know people, get them to like, know, and trust you, build rapport, and build credibility like the way I did, where I said, hey, it's going to cost me this, and it's going to do this, this is how long it's going to take me, and this is the process, because I was able to boom, 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 give them all the information. It wasn't generalities, it wasn't roundabout, it wasn't, oh, I heard about this, or it could be this. It was, this is legit what it costs, and I can even show you the damn receipts if I need to. And the last one, which is true in all walks of life, regardless of whether you're in business, whether you're in the military, whether you're with your kids, your family, or just friends and family, whatever, is keep your word and follow through with it. Be honest. Be a man or woman of integrity. Do what you say you're going to do each time, every time, right? And that's the best way to, get people to trust you. Now, like I said, I'm going to be doing individual deal breakdowns. So these 3 properties, right? I'm not going to do all of my properties. I'm going to do individual ones here and there that are unique. These are all pretty unique properties and they're pretty cool. And so I'm going to break each individual one down. Now, at the end of the day, I'm basically doing these all the same way. I'm using the same methods and the same techniques. However, there's unique things about each property, whether it be the size or how the inside was, or what was going on in my business at the time, or what was going on with tenants or not with tenants or with employees. So each one is different. It has multiple learning points. So I highly recommend checking them all out. The first one that you're going to see is coming up here pretty soon, and that one is going to be labeled How to Buy Rental Properties the Right Way. Okay, so check that one out and let me know what you think. All right, guys. Thanks for checking this one out. I hope you got a lot of value out of it. Hit me up, comment, hit me up on Facebook or whatever. Give me a call if you got my number. If you don't, hit me up on Facebook and I'll DM it to you. We can talk offline about how I run my numbers, how I was able to find all these deals, and my tips and techniques for becoming or getting sellers to want to reach out to you and do business with you. Well, go out there, make some money, guys. And as always, here's to your wealth.